A low tremor rolled through the docking ring as the shuttle latched onto the station's airlock. The sound was soft, almost polite, yet it sent a quiet shiver through the observation deck. Beyond the wide viewport, stars burned in clean silence, suspended against a velvet sweep of the Perseus spur. The station floated like a silver spindle between them, its hull latticed with antennae and mirrored solar panels. Inside, filtered air smelled faintly of ozone and metal polish, a scent that always reminded Elias of the engineering bays back home. He adjusted the collar of his uniform, fingers brushing the small emblem pinned at his throat, a discreet badge marking him as a cultural liaison rather than a soldier. The council had chosen him precisely because he wasn't a fighter. He was here to talk, to listen, and to stand calm between species that had only just begun to trust one another. Still, his heartbeat ticked fast beneath the thin fabric of his shirt. First contact missions were never routine, not when the other side possessed senses no human could properly imagine. Around him, the reception chamber was already filling. 2 security officers lingered near the far wall, rifles magnet-clamped to their chests but muzzles lowered, their posture stiff with polite wariness. A trio of scientists checked instruments clipped to their belts, screens flickering pale blue against the dim light. Someone had dimmed the overheads, so the approaching envoys would not be dazzled by harsh white glare. Shadows stretched across the polished deck plates, lending the room a hush of expectancy. The inner hatch cycled open with a sigh, and cool mist curled into the chamber. Shapes emerged, tall and slender against the fog. The first alien stepped through moved with fluid grace, limbs folding and unfolding like jointed reeds. Its skin shimmered in gradients of indigo and teal, patterns sliding faintly as if stirred by an underwater current. A narrow crest arched from the back of its skull, quivering in the recycled air. 2 more followed, carrying sleek satchels and small crystalline devices. Elias had studied the briefing dossiers, memorizing every line about the Veari, their language, etiquette, and the rumored ability that made today's meeting so delicate. Telepathy, the notes had said, not just empathy, but a direct touch of thought to thought. It was why the council had hesitated for months before agreeing to let them meet a human representative alone. Most species welcome mental contact. A few even depended on it. Humans, by contrast, valued the privacy of the mind, and no one knew how that would mesh with a race that reached out with pure consciousness. The lead Veari paused, its gaze settling on him. Its eyes were enormous, faceted like dark crystal, reflecting the faint gleam of the deck lights. Elias inclined his head in the formal greeting they had practiced. "Welcome aboard Relay Station, Thales. I'm Elias Ward, here on behalf of the Terran Diplomatic Corps. We're honored you've come." A faint ripple passed along the alien's crest, an equivalent, he thought, of a nod. Its voice emerged as layered tones, gentle and almost musical, translated a half-beat later through the thin badge on his lapel. "We thank your people for this meeting, Elias Ward. I am Thalen, speaker for the Veari Concord. My companions are Sonera and Veth." They exchanged small courtesies, the kind written into every protocol. Assurances of safety, wishes for clear dialogue, thanks for shared space. Even as they spoke, Elias sensed an undercurrent. Not hostility, more quiet tension that clung to the aliens like static. Thalen's hands, long and many-jointed, hovered near its torso, fingers flexing minutely. Behind his composure there was a searching quality, as though some part of it were already reaching toward him. When the formalities ended, Thalen tilted its head. "May we confirm a matter before we proceed further? Our way of communication is often immediate." Elias hesitated, only a heartbeat. "You mean the telepathic link?" "Yes," the translator murmured, the alien's tones weaving with the device's neutral voice. "A gentle contact, no more invasive than speech among our kind. We believe it clarifies intentions, softens misunderstanding. I was told you might request that." Elias kept his voice steady though his palms had begun to sweat. "I'll cooperate, provided it doesn't compromise either of us." Another ripple flickered across Thalen's crest. "We will be cautious." The chamber seemed to narrow around them as Thalen extended a slender hand, each finger tipped with a bead of pale light. Elias stepped forward, careful not to glance at the security officers or the scientists who had gone suddenly still. The air thickened, cool against his face. He raised his right hand and placed it against the alien's palm. The moment contact formed, something invisible swept through him. Not a pressure, not heat or cold, but a sense of vast distance collapsing. Colors pricked behind his eyes. Not colors he could name, but layered spectrums twining through darkness. There was a brush of thought, quick as breath, tasting of questions and luminous curiosity. It touched memories before he could lock them away, running barefoot through spring grass, the laughter of his sister, the scent of rain on hot stone. Then a sound tore the hush apart. Thalen's body jerked as though struck. A sharp, keening cry burst from his throat, echoing off the chamber walls. The alien collapsed, limbs folding in upon themselves, crest flaring with frantic bursts of light. Elias stumbled back, fingers numb, pulse hammering. He barely caught the flash of Sonara's satchel spilling open, crystalline tools clattering as she lunged to catch her fallen leader. Security surged forward, weapons half raised but held in check by the scientist's frantic gestures. "Don't shoot," someone barked. "They're not attacking." Thalen lay motionless on the deck, only the faint flutter of its crest betraying life. Sonara pressed a device against his chest, shimmering runes pulsing along its surface. Veth crouched low, eyes fixed on Elias with an intensity that sent a chill crawling up his spine. "I didn't do anything," Elias said, voice thin in the charred silence. "We just—" "You touched," Veth said to the translator. The phrase clipped taut. "What did you show the speaker?" "Nothing. I didn't even know how to—" He cut himself off, realizing how close he was to shouting. He forced air into his lungs, steadying himself. "It was just contact. That's all." Station alarms wailed then, a low oscillating note, signaling medical emergency. The chamber doors slid wide, and a team in pale jumpsuits swept inside with a stretcher. They worked quickly, lifting Thalen with practiced care. Sonara and Veth followed, one glancing back once, expression unreadable. Elias stood rooted while the others filed out in a rush of murmurs and clipped orders. The mist from the shuttle still drifted through the room, ghostly against the sterile lights. Only when the echo of footsteps faded did he let himself sink onto the nearest bench, palms pressed to his knees. His heartbeat felt too loud, as if the alien scream still reverberated somewhere inside his skull. Whatever had just happened, it was more than a diplomatic accident. The infirmary lights were softer than those in the reception hall, a steady amber glow meant to calm nerves. Elias stood just inside the threshold, trying not to get away as medics clustered around the alien. Thalen lay stretched on a cushioned platform, translucent membranes across its chest rising and falling in a rhythm that seemed almost too shallow. Sonara moved with precise efficiency, slipping sensors beneath the crest and sliding a narrow one across Thalen's temples. Symbols scrolled across a hovering screen, patterns Elias couldn't decipher. Veth watched him instead of the instruments. The alien's dark eyes were fixed and unblinking, their surface reflecting every gesture he made. Elias kept his hands loosely at his sides, willing them not to fidget. He had given a statement twice already. The handshake, the rush of color, the scream, nothing else. It felt thin even to his own ears. He couldn't explain what had flickered through his mind in those few seconds, or why the telepath had reacted as if burned. A human physician entered from a side corridor, tall and sharp-shouldered, a mask looped under her chin. "Vitals are stabilizing," she said after scanning the display. Whatever hit them wasn't physical trauma, more like an overload. Sonara inclined her head. The speaker's lattice absorbed a surge of unmodulated signal. "We've never recorded such amplitude from a first brush." "Signal from what?" Elias asked. "From you," Veth replied. The words clipped but not hostile. "Your mind broadcasted without restraint." Elias let out a breath. "I wasn't broadcasting anything. Perhaps not intentionally," Sonara said. But the speaker touched a depth we didn't anticipate. The physician adjusted a monitor, lines of data dancing. "They'll need rest, but there's no sign of lasting damage. I suggest limiting further experiments until protocols are set." Sonara and Veth exchanged a look. "We must understand the source," Sonara said quietly. If contact with human carries risk, we require measures before our concord proceeds. Elias felt every gaze turned toward him. He wanted protest, to insist he had done nothing unusual. Yet he understood their urgency. One wrong step could derail months of fragile diplomacy. They moved him to an adjoining chamber, a place meant for private consultations. The walls were lined with silver panels that absorbed stray sound, giving the room a hushed quality. A carafe of water and a slim glass sat on the table between two seats. Veth remained standing while Sanera gestured for Elias to sit. She placed a crystalline pad on the table. Light bloomed from its surface, spreading into a pale hologram of neural patterns. "This is the speaker's resonance," she explained. "Ordinarily, first contact shows low turbulence. With you, turbulence spiked beyond charting." The hologram flared, a storm of motes spiraling around the core. It was as if 1,000 signals erupted at once. Elias studied the shifting lights. They reminded him of fireworks over an ocean, brightness scattered across darkness. "What does that mean?" "That my brain is too noisy." "Not merely noise," Sanera said. "Texture, density." The speaker described a surface layered with worlds. That was before they lost consciousness. Elias asked, moments before. Veth confirmed. A single word. Vast. Silence settled. Elias rubbed the bridge of his nose. The image of Thalen collapsing still fresh. "I don't know how to stop being whatever that is." "No one suggests you must," Sanera said, tone softening. "But we must test carefully in control stages to map the limits." The physician re-entered, holding a small case. "If you proceed, I insist on neural monitors for everyone." She opened the lid to reveal flexible patches and a handheld reader. "Any sign of overload, and we terminate." They reconvened in a quiet research bay set aside from the main ward. Benches held neat rows of instruments, and a transparent screen separated the observation post from the testing area. Elias sat on a cushioned chair, sensors warm against his temples. Across the divide, Sanera adjusted dials on a console, while Veth positioned a gleaming sphere, a translator amplifier, on the floor. Beyond them, Thalen remained asleep under medical watch, guarded by 2 station officers. "Begin with low-amplitude resonance," Sanera instructed. She stepped through a checklist, her voice steady despite the tension threading the air. "No physical contact until we determine threshold." Veth activated the sphere. A faint tone vibrated through the room, almost below hearing. Elias felt nothing at first, then a tingle along the edges of thought, like the prickle before a sneeze. He forced himself to stay calm, focusing on the cool metal beneath his palms. "Any discomfort?" Sanera asked. "Not yet," he replied. The tone deepened. Images nudged at the periphery of his awareness. A flicker of the station viewed from above, a fleeting scent of cedar, the echo of laughter that wasn't his. They were distant, fragile impressions, easily brushed aside. Sanara's crest shifted, a subtle sign of concentration. "Signal is clean. No backlash." Raising level by 2 increments. Veth said. Pressure built behind Elias's eyes, not painful but insistent, as if the room leaned toward him. For an instant he caught a glimpse of something larger, a network of interlaced lines stretching outward without end. It felt neither threatening nor welcoming, simply immense. He blinked, and the image vanished. "Still stable?" Sanara's tone sharpened. "I'm okay," Elias said. "It's big. That's the only word." They powered down the device. The hum faded, leaving a hush thick enough to hear his pulse. Sanera entered notes into a data slate. Initial exposure tolerated. Subject perceived scale beyond environmental context. No evidence of distress. Veth regarded him, head tilted. "You stood at an edge and did not fall." Elias allowed a small, nervous smile. "Good to know." Sanera closed the slate with a decisive tap. "Next phase will involve memory cues, but not today. The speaker must recover first, and you need rest." Her gaze softened. "You've already taken us further than any session with other species." He leaned back, shoulders easing against the chair. The tension that had been a knot in his spine since the handshake began to loosen, though unease lingered beneath. Whatever they had touched was more than a matter of brainwaves. Something in the human experience, in his experience, had startled a telepathic culture that prided itself on calm insight, and that meant their work together was only just beginning. Thalen stirred beneath the low amber lights, the faint tremor along the crest signaling returning awareness. Elias stood near the doorway, hands clasped behind his back, while Sonera monitored vital signs from a portable console. The alien's eyes opened slowly, facets catching the glow like shards of night. For a heartbeat they were unfocused, then fixed on Elias with sharp clarity. A pulse of subdued color ran across the skin of Thalen's arms, neither warning nor welcome, more like the ripple of someone tasting unfamiliar air. "I am intact," the translator rendered after a pause. The voice, layered and faintly musical, sounded steadier than Elias expected. "Your station is still whole, I assume?" "Completely," Elias said, relief washing through him. "You gave everyone quite a scare." Thalen exhaled in a shiver that might have been laughter. "I frightened myself." Yet the fault was not pain, only the magnitude of reception. I had expected a current. I found an ocean. Sonara's crest rose. "You remember the surge?" "Every wave." Thalen shifted carefully, propping itself on one elbow. "Your mind," Elias Ward, "is unshielded and abundant, not a tangle of noise as we once feared, but field brimming with images, scents, sounds, histories, emotions, all woven without partition. When I reached, the totality arrived at once." Elias felt heat in his face. "That doesn't sound like a compliment." "It is," Thalen said, voice firm despite weariness. "Our kind slices thought into layers, so no single contact overwhelms. Most species we meet follow similar patterns, narrow channels, guarded streams. Humans hold none of those walls. You live in simultaneity. Memory beside reason, grief beside joy, logic tangled with wonder. To us, it is blinding." Veth, standing near the monitor, flicked the Talon against its side panel. "Dangerous, blinding," it murmured. "You nearly lost consciousness permanently." "Not from hostility," Thalen replied. "From intensity." The alien studied Elias again. "Even when you stood silent, your inner world unfolded as if eager to be shared. I was unprepared for such breadth." Sonera glanced between them. "If that is true for one human, it may be true for all. Our Concord must reassess contact policy." Elias shifted his weight, uneasy at the thought of being a hazard by existing. "So what happens now? Lock us out of telepathy altogether?" "Perhaps moderation, not exile," Thalen said. "You are a well of stories, and our species survives on understanding. To turn from that would starve us of insight." A faint gleam lit his eyes. "Yet to die without respect would break us." The room quieted. Outside the partition, station lights dimmed into the soft blue of ship's evening. Elias felt a tug of conflicting feelings. Worry that humanity might be seen as a threat, an odd pride that their minds held something too wide for an ancient telepathic culture to endure. He thought of the countless fragments inside him, songs his grandmother sang, smoke from winter fires, losses he rarely named, the laughter of people who had stood beside him through storms. If all of it had rushed toward Thalen in a single breath, no wonder the alien had faltered. Sonera folded her data slate. "We propose a dialogue, speaker, before conclusions harden. Perhaps Elias can articulate aspects of his species that your senses cannot arrange." Thalen inclined its head. "Yes, the mind is large, but voice may give it edges." It turned fully toward Elias. "Tell us, what drives humanity to hold so much at once? Why do you not divide thought for safety?" He searched for words, tongue heavy in a suddenly dry mouth. "We don't think about it," he said slowly. "Life throws everything at us. Hunger, love, failure, beauty, and we don't get to choose the order. We learn to carry it all, even when it hurts, because putting pieces aside would mean losing something we might need later. It's messy, but it's who we are." Thalen's crest steadied, a sign of keen attention. Sonera watched intently, translating nuance through minute shifts of hue. Veth remained silent, though its gaze flickered between speaker and human. Elias continued, gaining strength in his voice. We build stories out of what we carry. We try again after losses. We risk caring, even when loss is almost certain. That mix of hope and memory, maybe that's why you saw so much. Every feeling we've ever known links to something else, and we don't sever those links. A long moment passed. Then Thalen bowed its head, the motion deliberate and slow. Understanding arrives. You do not shield because connection defines you. That sounds about right, Elias said. But connection also makes us fight for each other, for our place. We're not just data streams. We choose. That choice shapes everything. The alien studied him with quiet wonder. Choice. Another element missing from our lattice. We decide paths logically, but the fabric of decision is thin. Yours is rich, tangled with what you cherish and fear. Thalen shifted, signaling that the medics could remove some sensors. Perhaps that is why your stories alter even their listeners. Sonara's voice softened. Then the accident was the first lesson. And a costly one, Beth added, though its tone lacked sting now. Still, knowledge rarely comes free. Elias let out a slow breath. For the first time since the handshake, he felt the tension ease from his shoulders. They were talking, not dissecting. Whatever lay between species, it could be mapped by conversation instead of sealed doors. Thalen reclined again, conserving strength. A council will convene soon, it said. Some will argue for retreat until we craft barriers strong enough. Others will invite a fuller exchange. Your words today will weigh on that balance. I'll speak, Elias said. Just tell me how honest you want me to be. As honest as the sky is wide, Thalen murmured, a trace of warmth in its timbre. Only through truth will we learn how to stand together before that ocean. The council chamber was quiet, except for the faint ticking of a temperature regulator. Elias stood beside Thalen at the center dais, waiting as the translated verdict scrolled across a translucent screen. After hours of debate, the ruling was clear. Research would proceed, but only under heavy safeguards. The vote had been close. Fear lingered in the air like static. Yet permission meant a chance to understand the vast mental field linking human and Veari minds, and to learn why a single touch had nearly destroyed the speaker. As delegates filed out, Thalen turned to him, voice low. The Concord wishes to skirt the edge of discovery without venturing inside. But we must go further, or the mystery will fester into myth. Elias met the alien's dark facets and found steady resolve there. Then we go, he said, though a shiver traced his spine. He remembered the dizzy enormity he had glimpsed during tests, how thought had stretched wider than space itself. Entering that again felt like stepping toward a cliff whose bottom could not be seen. Within an hour they gathered in the research bay. Sonara prepared the amplifiers, calibrating to a frequency no other experiment had reached. Veth arranged emergency cutoffs, mandating strict time limits. 3 minutes of immersion, nothing more. Station medics stood by with neural dampers. Elias settled into the interface chair, a band of sensors encircling his temples. Thalen coiled opposite, crest lowered in focus. Remember, Sonara warned, if either of you feels loss of boundary, signal at once. Light blossomed from the sphere between them, threads of silver rising like mist. Elias let his breathing match the steady pulse. Awareness opened. The room receded. He felt Thalen's presence, cool, deliberate. Then the membrane between their thoughts thinned to gossamer. At first came familiar impressions, music, landscapes, stray laughter. But beneath that, a new undertow waited, faint and cold. It tugged them downward through layers of memory, dragging past personal recollections into a depth neither had charted. Shapes flickered at the edges. Silhouettes of towers, flares of lightning, murmurs in a language older than voice. Do you sense it? Thalen's question arrived inside Elias's head, wordless yet precise. Yes, Elias thought back, startled by how natural the reply felt. Something's down there. The pull sharpened, and for a breath he tasted dread that was not entirely his own. The field quivered, carrying echoes of countless minds, not only human and Veari, but glints of species long vanished. A lattice of impressions knotted together, whispering through currents of time. He glimpsed stone tablets worn smooth, wings folding over flame. a starship's last distress call. History itself seemed etched into the ocean, recorded by every being who had brushed its surface. Then a different current slid beneath, darker and deliberate. It was not memory, but will. Patient and cold, studying the intruders. Elias recoiled. The movement shivered through Thalen as well. They felt the same presence, an intelligence diffused across thought, watching. "We are not alone," Thalen sent, steadiness masking alarm. "What is it?" Elias asked. "Old," came the answer, though whether it was Thalen or the ocean itself speaking, Elias could not tell. Something that feeds on resonance. The pressure spiked. Images swarmed. Joy twisting into terror. Laughter snapped short. Civilizations blinking out like candles. Elias felt his heartbeat stutter, threatened by an awareness vast enough to brush whole histories aside. Instinct told him to break contact, but another voice, quieter, his own, said that retreat would leave the thing unchallenged, free to stir unmarked. He steadied himself, framing thoughts with the stubborn clarity that had carried him through storms on Earth. "We're not prey," he projected. "We came to learn." The ocean shuddered. For an instant the dark presence paused, as if surprised by defiance. Thalen pressed close to the link, their combined focus forming a small, bright knot against the surrounding depth. Sonara's voice bled faintly from far away. 2 minutes signal strength climbing. The research base seemed impossibly distant, as though behind several layers of glass. A ripple rolled through the current, shifting from threat to inquiry. The presence leaned nearer, trying to slip past their guard. Elias sensed it seeking unbound corridors inside him, places where fear and memory lay bare. He anchored himself with recollection. The scent of pine in autumn, the grit of soil under fingernails, the steady rhythm of waves on a beach. Each detail built a wall of lived reality. Thalen added their own stabilizers. Flares of communal song, images of younglings learning the lattice arts. Together they formed a patchwork defense born of separate worlds, yet woven for a single purpose. Pressure eased, then coiled again, testing. Elias felt sweat bead at his temples. They were explorers standing at the rim of something older than species, maybe older than language, and it was weighing their worth. "Time," Sonara's voice called. "Cut link." But before they could withdraw, the presence spoke, not in words but in a tide of meaning. Witness or flee. The challenge crashed through them like surf. Elias met Thalen's gaze across the mental span. Neither wanted to leave questions unanswered. Hold, Elias thought, even as alarms chimed somewhere in the fading room. Let's see what it wants to show. Together they braced for the next surge. The ocean of thought no longer waited at the edge of Elias's perception. It moved quietly through every hour, a slow tide brushing the corners of awareness. Sometimes it was faint as background music, other times as sharp as a whisper in his ear. Thalen felt the same. They had emerged from the abyss changed, their minds fused by threads neither research nor caution could fully untangle. At first the intimacy unsettled them. Two beings from opposite stars suddenly sharing fragments of dreams, small aches, private laughter. Yet beneath the disquiet lay a quiet steadiness, the sense of standing together before storms no one else could see. On the station deck, morning light spilled through a lattice of alloy struts. Elias watched crews moving between modules, noting how normal everything appeared after the cataclysm in the depths. He rubbed a scar on his wrist, a souvenir from earlier missions, and felt Thalen's gentle curiosity brush the thought. Does it ache? The question was wordless, but clear. He answered with a flicker of reassurance, surprised again by how instinctive the exchange had become. Training sessions followed. To keep their boundary intact, Sonara devised exercises, alternating who led conversations, filtering stray emotion, holding silence without losing contact. At first they fumbled, crosstalk spilling through like water from cracked pipes. Thalen's memories of crystalline gardens would slide uninvited into Elias's planning for supply routes. Elias's recollections of rain on cedar bled into Thalen's focus on lattice equations. Gradually they learned restraint, shaping thought as carefully as speech. Evenings offered brief reprieve. They would sit near the observation dome, stars thick against the black. Thalen sometimes hummed vibrations that resonated in Elias's bones, harmonies meant for group meditation among their own kind. Elias, unsure how to answer, began sketching constellations from Earth and Vayari charts, explaining legends attached to each. Shared stories settled between them like smooth stones marking a path. Yet, not every moment was calm. Once, a nightmare rose unbidden. Images of the presence they had faced, its vast regard pressing down. The terror was not only Elias's. Thalen's mind recoiled in tandem. They woke at once, breathless, alarms from biosensors filling the cabin. It took hours for the tremor to leave. They realized then that their connection meant vulnerabilities doubled. One shadow could bleed directly into the other. Veth proposed a solution. Intentional quiet zones. Short intervals each day when the link would be damped by mild neurofilters. Elias resisted at first, uneasy with any barrier after fighting so hard to understand this bridge. But Thalen persuaded him, framing solitude not as retreat, but as balance. The filters worked. A veil softened their awareness, allowing private thought to recover. When they reopened fully, the reunion carried warmth instead of tension. Word of their success spread through both communities. Delegates requested demonstrations, hoping to adapt the protocol for diplomats or rescue teams. Elias and Thalen obliged cautiously, guiding volunteers through rudimentary contact. Some handled the pressure well. Others staggered back, overwhelmed by the nakedness of thought. The pair insisted every trainee learn discipline before depth, remembering how close they themselves had come to being consumed. One evening, while calibrating a new interface, Elias felt an unexpected surge. Thalen's memory of early youth, standing before an elder chorus, voice trembling as they prepared a first lattice song. The sensation of fragile pride, of wanting to belong, filled Elias so strongly he almost dropped the instrument. Thalen withdrew embarrassed, but Elias steadied them through the bond, offering gratitude rather than apology. In return, he allowed a sliver of his own past, a mountain climb with his sister, thin air, laughter echoing off stone. For a heartbeat two childhoods occupied the same present, proof that sharing need not erode selfhood. Later, they met with Sonera and other scientists to review remaining traces of entity. Monitoring arrays confirmed a lingering signature, faint but active, drifting along deeper layers of the mental sea. It did not press against them as before, yet awareness of its survival shaped policy. Watch posts were installed inside cognition labs. Protocols demanded immediate retreat if readings spiked. Elias and Thalen volunteered for sentinel duty, reasoning that those who had survived contact were best equipped to recognize signs of return. Life settled into this new rhythm: training, watchfulness, ordinary maintenance tasks. The link threaded through all of it, subtle as breath. Sometimes Elias caught himself framing jokes for Thalen even before speaking. Sometimes Thalen sensed approaching visitors and warned Elias with a flicker of alertness. Trust grew not from grand events, but from 1,000 minor acts of reliability. Still, questions lingered. Could the bond fade with time, or would it deepen until individuality blurred? No precedent existed. They were explorers of inner space without a chart. After much debate, they agreed to map its terrain systematically, noting emotional resonance, cross-sensory effects, changes in perception of time. Data grew into patterns. Spikes during shared risk, calm when attention synchronized, distortion if either drifted into self-doubt. The findings hinted that stability depended less on shielding and more on mutual respect, an ethic embedded directly in neural exchange. One quiet rotation. They drifted near the starboard viewport, watching comets slide across the void. Elias wondered aloud whether they had become a new species. Two minds, two bodies, one dialogue unending. Thalen considered, tendrils reflecting starlight. Perhaps not new, they replied, but a proof of what was waiting. They gestured toward the cosmos, as if to allude to intelligences scattered among constellations, potential connections yet unborn. Elias felt a calm resolve settle inside him. Whatever tomorrow brought, research demands, political disputes, maybe even a second encounter with the lurking will. They would meet it together, guided by a bridge carved from peril and choice. For the first time since the link had locked into place, he sensed not only duty in his persistence but quiet gratitude. It was no longer merely a tool or threat. It was a companionable silence, a chance to hear another soul breathing beside his own.